Hi there and welcome to Central Texas Gardener. I'm Tom Spencer. Get ready for a summer fling with sizzling bougainvilleas, plumerias, mandevillas, and more. Amanda Moon from It's About Thyme also has the tips that keep them blooming. On tour, visit a garden makeover that's one of the coolest places to be on a summer night.
Inspired by Japanese design, native plants, and significant milestones in their lives, Lee Clippard and John Stott took a new view of the yard that came with their 1950s house. On their blog, The Grackle, they chronicled their hands-on work and revelations since they made East Austin home in 2006.
The vision always was to have outdoor rooms where we could sit and be outside and enjoy it, because we both moved here from Wisconsin, and we were just so happy when we got down here and realized we could spend a lot more time outside and really take advantage of that by having these outdoor rooms. And when you have a small, older house and you entertain, it's nice to have the parties and visitors be able to use the space outside. It really kind of breaks through the wall, the traditional home yard boundaries.
You'll often find them on the patio since they expanded the tiny version that came with the house. They kept the Celtic knot, but removed shrubs that cramped entertaining.
I think one of the mistakes people make is making a space like this too big or too small. And this, for example, is 14 by 14. The posts, the distance between the posts, the whole gravel area of this patio is about 16 by 16. Knowing about dimensions of rooms, I think that is a very good distance for socializing. It's not too big, but it's big enough that you can get a lot of people around that area. But it's not too big that you're talking really far away from your guests or spread out too much.
Now there's room to furnish it, including a vintage bench off Craigslist.
This one is huge. It's 8 feet long. And actually it's great because I can take a nap on it.
And it provides a lot more extra seating when we have people over and are sitting out here. We do movie nights. We put a screen up on the garage. So we'll all sit around here and have a movie projected onto the garage, and 10, 12 people watching the movie and make popcorn. And that's just a nice way to use the backyard on a summer night.
Since lighting captivates the nighttime garden, they hung commercial lights that are hardier than their former Christmas string ones.
We wanted to use those to create kind of a ceiling for this space and create walls. And so we recently installed these big 6x6 cedar posts, and then the lights are just strung in a square around them. And even in the daytime, the posts define the area and sort of make it feel a little bit enclosed, not too overwhelmingly enclosed, I don't think. But especially at night with the lights just in a big square around you, it just feels like a very defined space.
One of their first projects was to break up the foundation between the house and garage for a connecting patio walkway of Luder stone. Working with Dig It Gardens, their design was inspired by Japanese garden philosophy where 4 corners never meet.
If you had a place where 4 corners met, the eye would naturally stop there. So rather than sort of travel past that.
They also adopted the Japanese philosophy of naturalistic elements.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we both are attracted to and we're striving for in the garden is creating a tension between linear, modern, sort of man-made elements and the natural, really organic elements. And so there's a lot of actually kind of stark, hard edges in this garden, but I think those are really softened by the just sort of wild plants that are planted right behind that edge. So what we wanted to do was create a space that can sort of stand on its own, but have it fill in, and sort of the edges are kind of wild. And so that's what you find, I think, with our patio too, is that there's this hard linear entryway and pathway and very flat sawn patio limestone, and then all of a sudden it will jump into just sort of the more natural limestone and kind of random, and sort of that tension between those two elements.
Yeah, and I think there's a skill to keeping it simple and uncluttered, because there's a tendency when you're a gardener to start adding things and adding things.
I don't know if we have that skill necessarily.
Well, I think in the entrance we've kept it pretty disciplined. I like to think, but yeah, it's hard to keep it disciplined.
I think sometimes it definitely, that's also a tension, right, between the simple and the more natural, or the natural and the modern. I think that's kind of that line we're trying to walk. I think that sometimes we want to add more things, especially to the entry to this back garden here. It feels like, I think, I want to put a little pot here with a plant in it or something like that. But I try really hard to resist that urge, because there's something really nice about just opening that gate and there's just 3 bamboo muleys there, and there's, just a bench and just a path, and you can see this is where I'm going into this garden.
But some things they don't want to see, like their new tankless water heater. With 2x2 cedar slats, John built a screen. The other Craigslist bench affirms John's design. Rather than planting vines, they chose a desert willow in front to add depth with its architectural grace.
When the desert willow is in full bloom, which is much of the summer, it is amazing. And the pink blooms are gorgeous, and there's hummingbirds that come to it, and there's hawk moth larvae that like to eat on it, and it smells really good when you walk in the back. Actually, that window, that corner right there is our kitchen, and we stand there all the time at the sink, and it's nice to have that desert willow, which is a little bit more airy and lacy, and when you're standing there washing dishes or working in the kitchen, to be able to gaze out and see through that desert willow to this space is really nice.
The path carries them past the patio to a built-up garden. Naturalistic beds that feed the wildlife frame the more controlled vegetable gardens that feed Lee and John. At the back, they built up berms and dug out a dry creek to redirect flooding rain that swooped down the slope to their house. To put an old post to use, they designed a milestone that keeps the people and places they love close to home. And it's also a compass. Although Lee and John want to connect the spaces, they arranged to separate their functions.
Sometimes it's nice to sit here on a Saturday afternoon with a lemonade or a beer or whatever, and not have to look at the vegetable garden and say or think, gosh, I wish I was out there weeding, or I really need to trim that. So what we have done is created a screen here with the bay tree and the wax myrtle.
Lee and John continue patio living in front, but with a different persona. Cooling shade in summer's heat, and a public view to connect with strolling neighbors. Diverse texture and ever-changing flowers to attract wildlife replace the spindly grass they tilled under. For a grassy look, low-care native sedges brush a pathway stone pattern that unites formal and naturalistic Japanese design. They replaced crumbling brick walls and built up the curbside with dry stack limestone. Austin Outdoor Studio customized the steel risers on their pea gravel walkway. Another Austin contribution comes from East Austin neighbor Roger Foster, a sculptor who represents Lee and John's portal to the sun, earth, and sky with ocular number 11, based on a shamanistic object from ancient China. Lee's brother Robert depicts their respect for wildlife with his custom-made ants. With the hardscape structure in place, their young garden balances native plants and hardy adapteds to respect resources as well as wildlife. They've also united the garden to the house, both outside and in.
So that there was some connection between those two spaces. And basically to kind of break down the walls between the garden and the house, so that when you're in the house, you feel like you're part of the garden. And we have lots of windows in the house, which is nice, so you can look out and just see the garden. It feels like a natural extension of the design within the house also.
Yeah, I think people who go in the house and in the garden will say, oh, this is clearly their aesthetic. I think there's a match between the inside and outside.
Thanks, guys, for opening your garden gate for us, and to Balmoret for providing the music for that beautiful piece. Right now, we're going to be talking about summer color with Amanda Moon from It's About Time, and welcome back to Central Texas Gardener, Amanda.
Thank you.
It's a great pleasure to have you here. Real briefly, let's tell people about It's About Time, located in Southwest Austin. And speaking of time, it's been around for a while now.
They have been around for a while. She's been around more than 20 years, and they have become a full-scale garden center. Sell everything from trees, shrubs, herbs, antique roses, natives.
Started with the herbs and got a lot of people interested in the culinary herbs here in the Austin area.
Absolutely.
But it has grown and blossomed since.
It sure has.
All right. And speaking of blossoms, our topic today is summer color, and you've brought along a lot of really cool things, some of which we haven't talked about for a very long time on the program, so I'm excited to see some of these plants. Right next to me is, and I have to say this, I love begonias.
I do too.
And these angel wing begonias are stunning and very popular with hanging baskets, but this one just is a knockout.
That's a Diana pink, and it's just the size of the blooms is what really caught my eye with this one. The great things about begonias is they're actually pretty drought tolerant.
Right.
They're somewhat deer resistant, and
Really?
they
Didn't
also
know that.
make nice porch plants. They make great hanging baskets for under a tree or a patio table.
Yeah. I love them in a hanging basket, especially the angel wing varieties where they kind of branch out and hang down so gracefully. And that's the thing. People kill these plants by lavishing too much attention on them. They look like they need a lot of love and care, but they actually thrive on basic neglect.
They do, and I guess that's why I do so well with them. But yeah, you can actually overwater them. You can love them to death. You just want to give them a little bit of an organic fertilizer, even once a month, and they would do beautifully with it. And just water them when they're going dry.
Right. Keep it under the shade of a tree, though, or something like that. And
Yeah, or
they're
morning
going to do
sun.
great. There you go. And next to me over here, we have a Mandevilla. And this is a plant that somehow just flew under the radar with me. I've never gardened with Mandevilla, really. And I love the foliage and love the flowers. But what kind of conditions do they like?
Well, it's a wonderful tropical option. So, it likes full sun. It loves the heat. So you need to get it at least 6 hours a day. It's not going to do well under a porch. It's not going to do well in the house.
Okay.
But around a pool, it would be stunning.
Right. Okay, so it is a true tropical blooming flower in that sense. What about the water requirements on this?
Water requirements are more of an even moisture to keep it blooming. You don't want to let it go bone dry, or it'll actually drop the flowers.
Okay, yeah. And I imagine just looking at this, it will let you know real quickly.
Yeah, the new growth will wilt pretty quick.
Yeah. But beautiful. This is a white, but it comes in a wide range of colors.
Pink, red, yellow are some of the options that you'll find, and all different leaf sizes.
Yeah. Well, absolutely beautiful. Again, Mandevilla. And does require a little support for the vine to grow on.
It is a vine, so either a small trellis or a hanging basket or even a tall planter where it can cascade down.
Great, great. And a great choice for poolside for sure,
Absolutely.
on the patio. Now, this is one of the most common plants. The next one we're going to talk about is crepe myrtle. But, you and I were visiting off the camera just a little while ago. We both admire this plant so much for a really good reason, too.
It's tough.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're looking for something that's a tree or a shrub that's going to bloom in the height of the summer when everything else has quit, the crepe myrtle's the way to go.
Yeah. And tough also in the sense that the new varieties are disease resistant, really require almost no care whatsoever. Right. And one of the things, this is a particular variety that's only a dwarf. This one only grows to be about 4 feet tall. It's called Pink Ruffles. And it's a good tip for people when they're considering a crepe myrtle. Buy a plant that's going to grow to the size you want, and you won't have to prune.
That's right, because we've got options that are anywhere from a dwarf that you can use as a shrub all the way up to a small tree that would give great, quick shade to any part of your yard.
Yeah, some of them, like the Natchez, get up to 35 feet pretty quickly.
Exactly, and for color, the Muskogee and the Tuscarora.
Yeah, awesome, awesome plants. Now, next to the crepe myrtles, we have Duranta, and this one is a beautiful blue color. And I just love the bloom on this. It's almost orchid-like sprays.
Absolutely stunning. It's also known as sky flower. Very drought tolerant. They do mention you can put it in some shade, but it stays tighter and more compact in the full sun. It's going to put on yellow berries in late summer, so you're going to have full season interest, even when it's 100 degrees.
Even when it's 100. And this is one that a lot of people were concerned about its cold hardiness, but you indicated before the program that yours has come back from a record cold this year.
That's right, and it's in a galvanized bucket. So it was
Go figure.
Not real protected, yeah, but it was a couple of years old, so it had a more established root system.
Okay.
The new ones are definitely going to be more sensitive.
Well, you can't talk about tropical color without mentioning hibiscus.
Absolutely.
There are 1,000 varieties here for people to choose from. You brought a Chinese hibiscus, a typical tropical one, but there are native forms, hybrid forms, you name it.
Well, even our native rock rose and Turk's cap are part of the hibiscus family. We have Muy Grande and Texas Star hibiscus, which are perennial hibiscus. Your tropical hibiscus, you're going to want to make sure they're going to need more water, a little bit more fertilizer than your perennial hibiscus, a little bit more care and protection in the winter.
Yeah.
But then they will bloom for you all summer, big, beautiful plate-shaped flowers.
Or you could use an Althea, a Rose of Sharon, hardy hibiscus, and just a cheat.
That's right, that's right.
Well, I think they're a fantastic plant.
They are, make a great large shrub.
Yeah. Well, Tacoma stands or yellow bells has become super common, but what's not common is the native form. And you've brought the native today, and I happen to really like the very fine textured foliage on this one.
I like it too, because it doesn't look like your typical hybrid, where it's got kind of the large leaves. It's got that nice feathery look. Blooms a little bit later than the standard hybrid, but it's just tough as nails, extremely drought tolerant, and does really well in combination with Pride of Barbados and Plumbago as a full summer color grouping.
Yeah, the hardiness of this is really amazing. I planted one in my last garden, and I think I watered it once, and it just let it go.
Yeah.
And it's as happy as it can be. Now, you mentioned the Plumbago. Right next to it, we have Plumbago, and that is another super summer color plant. But, you know, the combinations, this is one, I love combining a yellow and blue, and the yellow bells and the Plumbago really work well together. I just did a planting with those two plants plus Blackfoot daisy for some white to kind of cool it all down, and I think that really works as a color combination. Blue, yellow, and white is a really nice theme color kind of to work with. But Plumbago is hard to beat.
It is, and all three of those will bloom all summer long. You've just got to be patient in years like this, because sometimes they come back a little late. Right.
Well, real briefly, let's talk about the Bougainvillea as well. This is one that everybody loves on patios and pools. And the trick with this really is don't baby it too much, like the begonia, really.
It is. And actually, a lot of people, one of the problems they have with it is they can't ever figure out how to get it to bloom. They've got lots of leaves, but no color. Well, the trick is actually to let it dry out a little bit, and that will encourage blooms.
Then, and also pruning it back a little bit kind of helps it bloom too.
Exactly. Yeah, and just remember, they are a tropical. They may be evergreen in California, but not here.
Okay. Well, real briefly, It's About Thyme is located where?
We are located on Manchac Road, about 2.5 miles south of Slaughter Lane.
All right. Well, easy to find, a great nursery that has, for a very long time now, helped area gardeners get connected with more than just thyme and rosemary and all the other great herbs, but now this full array of landscape plants. Amanda, thank you so much for coming on Central Texas Gardener.
Thank you.
All right. And coming up next, it's our good friend Daphne.
Hello and welcome to Down to Earth. I'm Daphne Richards. We continue to get great questions from our viewers, and this week's no different. Mark and Jana are having questions about their tomato plants. Now that the plants are grown in, they've noticed that they're kind of crowded. They planted them a little too close together, and that some of the lower leaves on the plants are not so healthy. So they're curious if they might have a disease problem, and if they should remove those diseased plants. Well, if the plants were diseased, they should definitely be removed. But I love this question because so many people that grow tomatoes have the same one. From these pictures that Mark and Jana sent to us, the plants actually look pretty good. So they have a little insect damage on the lower leaves perhaps, but overall they look pretty healthy. During the tomato growing season, I get quite a few questions about yellowing lower leaves such as these. Well, because of the heat and our lack of rainfall during the summer, and because we often plant tomatoes a little too close together, those lower leaves do often turn yellow and maybe get a little scraggly. With our vegetable gardens, many of us are extra vigilant that nothing goes wrong early in the season to damage our potential harvest, so we may tend to think that insects or diseases are an issue, but really the plants are just drought and heat stress. It's a very common problem in raised beds, where peat moss-based potting soils are commonly used. That peat moss does dry out very quickly, even if it's not watered properly, and those are very difficult soils to get re-wet once they've dried out a little too much. Our plant this week is Peter's Purple Bee Balm, Monarda Peter's Purple. There are a lot of great Monardas for our area, but this is a fairly new one to the market. Research at the Dallas Arboretum has shown this plant to be extremely resistant to powdery mildew, and that can be a problem in bee balms in some areas. This plant loves the heat and the full sun. It'll be covered with gorgeous light purple blooms that attract hummingbirds and butterflies, and also, as its name implies, bees. The literature on this plant says that it will flower in June and July, but mine flowered in early May and it's still blooming. It's listed as hardy to zone 6, which is around 0 degrees, and I found that to be true this year. I planted mine in the summer last year when they were about 6 inches tall and wide, and they didn't grow much. When we had our very hard freeze this winter, those plants were covered in snow and they looked like mush. I thought for sure they were goners. But after the snow melted and the temperatures warmed up just a little, they were growing like gangbusters. It shoots up very quickly to about 4 feet tall and grows in clumps that get about 2 feet wide, so give it plenty of space. Water it a couple times a week during the hottest time of year. To do in your garden this week, it's getting late in the season to be planting, but if you didn't make time to fill in all the holes in your garden, you can still plant some heat-loving bulbs such as daylily, crinum, and ginger. We'd love to hear from you. Please visit klru.org/ctg to send us a question or plant of the week from your garden.
Thanks, Daphne. Now let's check in with John Dromgoole for Backyard Basics.
Hello gardening friends, welcome to Backyard Basics. You know, there's a lot of potting soil out there, different kinds, and lately there's been a lot of interest in hanging baskets again, whether you're growing ferns or impatiens or an assortment of things. And you need something really lightweight. I've seen these tomato devices. The tomato goes into this container and hangs out the bottom and is grown right there. And those are usually used on porches where people don't have gardens to use them in. And there's many other applications, like you need something lightweight after you put a transplant into it and you want to grow it out a little bit. So here's some ideas on how to do that. And you can save a lot of money too, and that's always important, isn't it? This is coir fiber right here. Coir fiber, you probably heard the term quite a bit. Sometimes you see it in a little brick, other times you see it in a package. This is a real neat alternative to peat moss. Now, coir fiber comes from coconuts. This is the outer part of a coconut right here. Real pretty. They used to make stuffing for car seats out of this. Look at that right there. Another thing that goes into this mix would be perlite. You know perlite. It's been around forever, and you've seen it quite a bit in growing mediums or in rooting mediums. It's out there too in that way. So those are two of the ingredients. And then if you have some pretty soil, and you might after working it organically for a while, or you have a little bit of well-finished compost. I like to add soil to my compost pile. So that's the third component. There are different blends, but with this right here, we'll see that you put them in at equal amounts. And so equal amounts, this would be maybe 5 containers, small containers, 5 of these and 5 of these, and you come up with a really neat growing medium. You just blend it. You know, I like to spray a little moisture on the perlite because there's a dust in it. I want to keep the dust down also. And you may even want to go ahead and moisten your coir fiber. It's hard to moisten like peat moss. When it's already made and it's down inside of a pot, you have trouble moistening it. So these are the 3 ingredients. This is a nice device for mixing at home, keeps everything nice and neat. So After we've got them all mixed very nicely, here's what it looks like. This is the blend right here, and look at that. That's just a beautiful mix. It's got a little bit of that compost, it's got some perlite and coir fiber. Not all potting mediums are that lightweight, so this is a real good choice, and you build it yourself. It's going to be a little bit hard to find it, but when you blend everything together, you're going to have a beautiful lightweight soil, and it'll be all organic. For Backyard Basics, I'm John Dromgoole. I'll see you next time.
Visit klru.org/CTG to watch online, get more tips, and to read our blog. Next week, meet some common psychoactive plants with Susan Wittig-Albert. Until then, I'll see you in the garden.
To learn about today's program, watch online, and follow CTG's blog, check out klru.org/CTG.